Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting custom rifle build video from Accurate Rifles and Restorations. I'll be your commentator and host today. My name is Jeff. I am the owner, operator, and gunsmith for Accurate Rifles and Restorations. So this rifle will be converted to 338 ARC, or Hornady's advanced rifle cartridge. So we're going to have to do some work to the bolt and other aspects to get this thing to work. Basically, this customer resides in Alabama and apparently has a substantial deer problem with them invading in large numbers, eating all the corn or some such issue, and wants a subsonic Bambi Eradicator to maintain a more healthy population between seasons. It's all legal, we assure you. They have permission. It's also private property, I'm sure, but basically they have to get rid of a certain amount of deer per month. Otherwise, the population just explodes and they're just overrun by deer. So what we're doing here is aligning the receiver in the lathe. So we've just got kind of a zoomed in view, and this is like blueprinting or accurizing. Search the channel if you don't know what I'm talking about. Just type in blueprinting and you'll find a detailed explanation video about that. I do this a whole lot to bolt action rifles. Basically, we're going to true up all the surfaces and get everything perfectly square to the centerline datum of the receiver there. So basically, we've got two perfectly sized bushings installed in the bolt bore raceway, and this indicating mandrel is sticking out 6 to 7 inches, and we've got two 1/10,000 style indicators on that mandrel. It's a perfectly ground mandrel, so it is perfectly round, and so we are aligning both axially and radially the receiver here in preparation for single point remachining. So I remachine the face, the torque shoulder, the face of the receiver there, the threads. We're going to make those threads larger as we cut them square, and the bolt lug abutments in the back where the bolt lugs lock up in battery. And there's other features to be done. Like I said, check out the blueprinting video that I have on this channel. And so we're getting this dialed to within 1/10,000th of an inch, and we'll have another view here real soon. So there's a zoomed in a little bit, and you can see those needles are not moving. Maybe a couple half-tenths, half-quarter-tenth of a thousandths of an inch. So, I mean, yeah, true as can be. So here it is. This is the internal threader. So this is cutting out, not really cutting out, but we're following the original thread in this receiver and basically just truing it up. Little by little, like you would do chasing an existing thread. So I get that tool bit lined up, perfectly lined up with those threads, and then I start cutting them incrementally, progressively deepening them. So you can see it's kind of flashing bright and dark areas there still. So you're just seeing the parts that are getting cleaned up and the parts that are not yet. So that shows you how out of square these threads were to begin with. So there's really no number here. It's just keep cutting until it's trued up. And then I have a series of test stubs that I make up that I check with. I'll check all the different sizes until I find the optimal size. Usually we end up right around 1.086. So 1.082 to 1.086 pretty much falls in that general area from an original thread of 1.062. So we're cutting out a good 20 thousandths or more, pretty much. Is this unnecessary? Maybe for a 338 ARC. This is going to be a 338 advanced rifle cartridge, so, Not a bench rest rifle by any means. All right, here is the 1/10,000th of an inch dial test indicator, and we are showing run out. And now I'm gonna true up the face. Same thing with the threads, so the threads are done. And now I'm just gonna remachine that face, or it's also known as the torque shoulder, so that's where the barrel will torque up to. So both those surfaces perfectly square with each other means a 1-to-1 contact and absolutely no pull off one way or the other when the barrel is torqued on. And that's all it takes, folks. A couple thousandths and we're squared up. Bright, shiny new steel there. And then we're going to measure run out on the machine surface after it's been machined. And obviously it's going to have no run out. So this one wasn't too bad. 1/1000th of an inch out. And now we're 0, so that's good. All right, so this 338 advanced rifle cartridge build we're doing here for our customer. As you know, we're going with the standard Remington 700 short action. It was originally chambered in 223 Remington, so it's got that appropriate bolt face for that cartridge. Well, the 338 ARC is just a little bit bigger, of course, so it will not fit. Will not fit, so that's no problem. What we're going to do is cut out all this stuff, install basically a new bolt nose internal thing there so we're going to make that bigger. And in the process, that's going to get rid of our built-in extractor, which is right there. So that extractor is going to go bye-bye, which means, well, now we need a new extractor. So we're going to install one of these Badger Ordnance M16 styles. And I was kind of debating on whether or not to go with a mini or this one. This is the standard. It's advisable to use this with a 308 case. But just looking here at the ARC, the radius is almost identical here. And it fits that extraction rim just perfect. So I got no worries here. I think this is going to work out just fine. So, you know, worst case, I ruined the bolt. And we'll have to figure something else out. But pretty sure this will be fine. Like I said, that fits that thing just fine. That radius is perfect and everything. So I think, by golly, we're going to take a chance on this. So first thing we got to do is get this installed in the lathe. Got my little stub back here that I make for these kinds of jobs. So that holds it in. It is threaded into the back of this bolt. Machine concentric with all the features are, but really all it does is allow me to put this in a 4-jaw and center it up so that it's spinning nice and true. We're gonna, once we got this aligned in the lathe off of a live center off the firing pin hole, we are going to install what's called a steady rest, which will allow me to pull away the live center off the face and give access to the face of the bolt so that we can do the machining on that. So yeah, we will be cutting the internal diameter. I'll be cutting the internal diameter here, a little larger. I got these little rings here I make out of stress-proof steel, 416 stainless. That will be installed into the bolt nose there. It will be soldered in permanently, and then we'll come in and remachine everything. We will remachine the internal diameter. So we're going to get that to fit the case with just a little bit of clearance. And I make these so they stick proud, so we'll machine it back down to the original surface So from here to the bullet face, that'll be the same. It's usually about 150. Haven't measured this one yet, but that's probably about where it is. Then we'll go in the milling machine, and install the slot for the extractor to sit in. That'll sit there on the side of the bolt body, adjacent from the ejector. So it's going to go right there. And then we have to rotate the bolt so that we can get access to the side to drill and ream a hole for the cross pin to get that extractor in the bolt and to be held in place so that obviously it won't come out. All right, now here we are working on the bolt. This is cutting the pocket for the sleeve. We're going to do a rear sleeve on this thing. Again, is this overkill for a 338 arc? Probably, but it's what our customer wants, so that's what we're going to do. That's, you know, they wanted the best of the best on their Remington rebuild. So we're going to give them the best of the best. No corners cut here. I've got the one half of those sleeves, so I'm just getting the length established there. Just holding the sleeve up, kind of eyeballing it, and I hold it there until it drops in as I machine it. So you can feel it kind of drop into place, and then I know it's long enough. And now there's the two halves of the sleeves pre-positioned. So we'll get those on there. And while I've got the bolt in the lathe spinning off the center line, I go ahead and true up the backs of the lugs there, and that's where those lugs will lock up in the back of the receiver. So both those surfaces are also perfectly square with each other. They will also be lapped in under the trigger pressure, under a real-world environment. So basically one-to-one fit on all that stuff, which just reduces inconsistencies in the system because everything is basically has nowhere to move. No more slop, as they say. Lugs are trued up now. The rear sleeve has cured, and now I'm machining that down to the optimal size of the back of the receiver. In this case, it was, let me see my notes, 702. So the bolt bore raceway measured 702 thousandths, which is actually a little on the small side for most Remingtons. Most of them are in the 705 area, but that can vary receiver to receiver. So anyway, I machine these sleeves to about a thousandths undersized of the nominal size. So these sleeves will be cut to about 701. That way they can still function, and if a little bit of Alabama grit gets in the way, there will be no problem with functioning. And here we skip ahead to the barrel work. As you can see, most of the breech features are done, and I'm just showing some chambering. This is a preferred barrel blanks, 338 caliber, obviously. And it's a big old 1 1/4 inch diameter bull barrel. So getting that chamber cut to headspace, so there's the gauge, and putting on the old oversized recoil lug made by Badger Ordnance. This barrel features a 1 8 twist, which is optimal for the 338 arc, at least in this kind of configuration, longer barrel bolt action rifle. So we're just gonna get that receiver get on, and we're gonna check and make sure this bolt will close on the headspace gauge as it should. There it is, closed by hand, and it closes, obviously. Giving it a little extra yark, making sure there's no resistance. For the go gauge, and then we're going to go ahead and put a piece of Scotch tape on the back of this thing and check it as it were be a no-go gauge. And as you can see, that bolt is not closing. And when it's fully torqued on, under 100 foot-pounds, that thing will be as dead as a doornail. So that bolt will not close any further than just barely. So for a hand-tightened barrel, that is exactly what I'm looking for. And as always, I check with a actual live round. Fear not, there is no firing pin. And Houston, we got a problem. What the f? Oh my god. What the f is this? Huh. Look at that. Isn't that f cool? Well, turns out the reamer manufacturer made a little bit of an error there and failed to cut any sort of neck on the reamer. Well, they cut the neck, but it was just too small. Way under spec. Took me a little while to figure out what was going on, but I measured the reamer, and sure enough, that neck was a good 20-some thousand small. So yeah, the live round would not fully seat into the chamber because the neck would not go through the area that was supposed to be properly cut for the neck. Ah, yes. And here I am about a month later. Got a replacement reamer from I will not mention names on who made that reamer, but those of us in the industry that have been around long enough probably could guess as to who that probably was. They, yeah. We'll just call them no neck reamer manufacturer from the west side of this country. Anyway, I know mistakes can be made, so who knows. But anyway, here I am just chambering that a month later, so I had to reinstall the barrel and all that stuff. No worries, easily done, and I got the thing chambered properly in the end. Okay, now here is the the muzzle end. Customer wanted this to be, check my notes, 16 inches long, so I'm cutting off probably nearly half of this barrel. I just got a really long one so I could use the steel for other things in the shop. So I got that parted off. Now we're just cleaning up the parting cut, getting that squared up, basically preliminary square, just to get the burrs out of there so I can indicate it in. I just part it off and then we'll square it up, align it basically in the chuck for proper machining. So here we are with the Mitutoyo 1/10,000th of an inch indicator, getting that bore running perfectly true, getting that centered up, because we're going to be cutting some threads on this thing. Going to be cutting some 5/8/24, probably not the correct size, but again, this is a customer rifle, that's what he wanted. And so here is post centering of the barrel or the bore, and now we are actually facing this off perfectly square, and then it will be actually crowned later properly as well. I always put 11-degree target crown on there. And so here we are turning the tenon for the 5/8/24 muzzle device that I did not have. We're going to be making them a custom thread protector on my end, as we do with most of these custom rifles. So anyway, yeah, we got a ways to go here, folks. Got probably 600-some thousandths to take off. 575 thousandths. And just like that, it's machined down. So 5/8 major diameter. So we'll go in there, do a little ghost pass, and true up the shoulder real quick since we got the tool in there. So you can see it's barely wisping off anything. I mean, wouldn't doubt it's a pretty rigid setup there. So dig into the shoulder a little bit and pull on out, feed out, square that up, all in one operation. How you like that? They call me this human CNC. And here we are, threading this thing, 24 threads per inch. Got my AR Warner high-speed steel cutter. And we're going to go in there and thread this thing. Checking the TPI, and yep, look at that, 24 threads per inch, right on the money. Very good. So I'll proceed to thread this to depth and check it with the go gauge, the thread pitch gauge, that is. And here we are machining the 11-degree crown. I do this last. Just because most of that material is gone, so it's just more efficient for time constraint reasons. And as you can see, it just takes a few passes, and we got a beautiful 11-degree crown. And we'll do a little deburring action here. And check that muzzle. Make sure there's no snagging, no burrs left over. So if strands of that Q-tip get left over, we know there's burrs, and there obviously we're not. This is the cutoff portion of that barrel, and now we're going to do, this is me making the thread protector. So other nice thing about a straight tapered barrel, you can use the cutoff as a perfect, the same size thread protector as the muzzle end. You know, a tapered barrel, a lot of times you got to use a little bit larger stock to get the same diameter. Otherwise, you'll have an ugly step in there. So, no matter. That's why I save these cutoff pieces. This cutoff barrel will be turned into many, many different things. Probably thread protectors. But here we are knurling. This is kind of a cheap knurling tool. It's I bought it from Grizzly, so you know, cheap Chinesium grade. Run of the mill, 3 different fine, medium, coarse selection of knurls. I always use the medium there. It seems to be the nicest one. But just kind of going over this with the knurling tool and checking. Yep, it's grippy. We'll come off almost to the end and then reverse the feed. So I go over this about 3 times. And I found, just like Joe Pye has demonstrated in his wonderful knurling video, that if you leave everything engaged, all the power feed gears, you can go over and over and over, and just like threads, it won't lose its place. So it basically, I'm just progressively deepening the knurls. And I don't go too crazy, just enough that it aesthetically looks nice and obviously provides a little grip. Well, quite a bit of grip probably in this case. Yep. Feeling that knurl. Definitely don't want to do that with the machine running. I would hate to see a fingy get sucked into that. That would not end well for the machinist or his hand. Okay, knurls are done. I'm going to go in here and bore this baby out. 5/8 24 calls for a 37/64 drill. So that's what we got in there. Drilling out for the internal threads. Then I'm going to cut a small relief because I do not put reliefs in the muzzle of the barrel. So we'll put the relief in the end of the device because all suppressor adapters these days have a nice relief cut. And if they don't, well, too bad. And here we are with a high-speed steel 4-flute tap using the momentum of the enormous 100-pound chuck and kind of just threading this by hand. Sure, I could kick the machine on and let it go, but I don't know. Parting off just a touch long. Parting off that knurled section and the threaded section of the now custom thread protector. And so I'll go in there and machine it. So it looks nice and pretty, just like that. So there's the finished breech and the finished muzzle. So this barrel, essentially all the machine work is now done, completed. And there it is, torqued onto the receiver. Nice, short, compact package there. 338 arc is born from a 223 Remington. So, all right, here we are with the Christensen Arms Modern Precision Rifle MPR chassis. And we're just trying to trial fit here. And looks like we got a problem again. Of course we have a problem. Christensen did not make room for an oversized recoil lug. Good to use that sound effect twice in this video. So here we are back at the milling machine. We are going to mill out the pocket for the recoil lug because Christensen Arms loves to make my life harder. I also had this happen to me with a MDT chassis. I'm just like, why the heck would you not leave room for an oversized recoil lug? I guess in this case it makes sense because it's for their own rifle and they use the dinky little 3/16 recoil lug. So I suppose they didn't have people in mind that would be custom building off this, but the customer wanted this chassis, so that's why we went with it. It is a nice chassis. It's just, I had to take out a heck of a lot of material here. As you can see, you know, it didn't come off. I know it looks like it's on there by, you know, got like maybe 10 thousandths left, but I assure you, it's still on there to this day. But you know, you got to do what you got to do sometimes. What can I say? I mean, I wasn't gonna just change up the recoil lug at the end of the job like this. So, you know, a little of this black stuff will probably help keep it together. We'll just smear some of this in there and hope for the best. But anyway, yeah, we're just going to bed this in place. As always, I bed pretty much everything. I've never met a guy that was like, no, don't bed it. You know, you're putting all this money into something, you might as well go the extra couple miles and bed it properly. So that's what we're doing. And as a custom personal touch, I always offer fiber laser engraving services. You know, we can do logos, images, text, you know, anything the customer might want. In this case, they run a farm. So this is the Corral Family Farms, I think it's called. Obviously got a picture of a mighty looking buck there. Ironically, this rifle's to slay all of his mates. But yeah, I don't know, kind of funny. But the fiber laser engraver does an excellent job. I'm very happy we invested in that. Wasn't cheap, but definitely makes our products look very professional. in the end. So this has obviously been Cerakoted already. I don't remember the color. It's obviously some sort of green. Oh, it probably was FS green. My wife would know. She does all the Cerakote, and she will be scolding me for not remembering. But well, here it is. Your custom-built 338 ARC on a Remington 700. Custom rifle. Finally got the thing to feed. Originally, I was going with this steel box magazine by MDT. I just kind of like these when they actually work. Unfortunately, there's nothing made for the 338 ARC specifically, and I was having a little bit of trouble with this thing nosediving and having some problems feeding out of this thing. And what it is these control rails here. So that's an impression in the magazine box. And so I was trying to whittle away, and I got it working a lot better. It's not 100%. It'll feed about 5 rounds reliably. So this one works, just not 10. So I was looking around for another option, and MDT makes these plastic ones, polymer mags, that don't have that stupid rail in them. And much to my delight, that these actually work. I got all 10 in there, and they function fine. They feed, extract, and eject. And so super happy with that. That was what I thought was going to be the final piece of the puzzle. So I went out and was doing some testing, and unfortunately come to the end of the road, the very last piece, and lo and behold, there's another problem. We're going to chalk it up to the extremely short case here that we're working with. That being the 338 advanced rifle cartridge case. So, you know, I was out there in the range shooting this thing and having some trouble ejecting the cartridges. Pretty much noticed it right off the bat. Initial tests, I was using live rounds, and obviously it's got this big 338, very long bullet. The bullet goes almost halfway down into the case, you know, it's super long. So it has enough support as it's pulling out of the chamber. The nose of that, you know, the entire length of this bullet is supporting this thing throughout its travel back, and then it spits it out. So this thing will eject live rounds perfectly. Like that's why I didn't think there would be an issue. Unfortunately, very last final checks, I found out the hard way that, oh, yep, that is an issue. So what's happening here is I had to modify the bolt face to the 6.5 Grendel size, the 441. And so in doing that, I took out the original extractor. So we put in this M16 style extractor for you. And it is doing its job just fine. There's no problem here. The problem is the spring-loaded ejector here on the face of the thing. You know, this is it's got a big spring behind it, and its only job is to push the case out, you know, as it's pulled out of the chamber. It is pushing against that rim, and as it pulls through the ejection port, spits the case out like that. Well, what's happening with this extremely short case is it is letting go prematurely. So you fire the thing, you start pulling it out, and due to the short nature of this thing, it has enough wiggle room inside there to jump off of that. So, you know, unless it's supported fully, once it leaves the chamber and encounters that free span inside the receiver between the mouth of the chamber and the inside of that receiver before it hits the ejection port, it is actually slipping off. You see that if it gets to the correct angle, it's going to slip off the extractor rim and not be supported anymore. So it basically lets go inside that free space inside the receiver before it encounters the ejection port. So when it's chambered, the cartridge is way in here, inside the barrel, obviously. So you fire that thing, and as it pulls out, you see right here is where it's letting go, inside of this section. So there's a bunch of free area in here, and it's basically kind of letting go and flopping loose, and then it just kind of ends up right there. So here's a live round, and when I was testing this, trying to get the magazines to work, I was delighted to see that. You know, the thing will spit out. It'll spit out a live cartridge, no problem. You know, I can get 10 in the magazine, and when I was testing the feeding, it feeds and extracts and ejects perfectly. So I was super happy to see that. Just didn't discover this till I went out and shot it today. So this is the problem we're having here. So once it's fired like that, there's just not enough support. So here's what's happening. Let's see if I can fish that in there. So once you fire the round, obviously you'll open the bolt and you'll see that's what happens. It pulls back and it lets go about right here. So it'll flop out of the bolt face before it encounters this ejection port here where it's supposed to. You know, this is just one of those things with those super short cartridges. It's really, really intermittent. I think I had probably 3, maybe 4 that ejected properly in that initial testing. Yeah, see, that time it didn't. Due to the fact of this extremely short case, this 1-inch 300 thousandths length case, it doesn't have a lot of support. They don't call me a gunsmith for no reason. I had to put my gunsmithing hat on and really kind of think long and hard about this whole thing. So what I did was I put an M16 extractor in here, a standard M16 style Badger Ordnance extractor. And due to the geometry of that extraction rim, I believe what was happening was it was not only premature, but it was actually throwing the case, instead of out the side of the ejection port, it was throwing it up. So it was basically hitting like up here rather than coming clear of the ejection port like that. And I tried different ejector springs. I tried different, I tried a whole bunch of stuff, and finally just like, well, you know what? It's a $50 part. If I have to replace it, I'll replace it. So I started whittling away, and hopefully you can see what I did there. Basically ground off about half of it, leaving this portion of it intact, which causes a more angular ejection. Basically, that's causing the case to throw more out of the ejection port. Right, so again, in the footage, you'll see the frustration in my face, I'm sure. So every time I would open the bolt, the case wouldn't fly out like it should. So now it's clearing and actually ejecting the way it should. You still have to be pretty aggressive with the bolt. It seems like the faster you whip it open, the better it actually ejects. But see, we're definitely getting much more reliable ejection out of the system now. If you're a little too slow with it, it still won't work. But if you're fast, rip the bolt back fast, quickly, it'll throw it out. So kind of a training issue with this. So yeah, if you're slow and hesitant, it's not gonna eject. But open the bolt, rip it back. Training issue, just keep that in mind. I don't have the firing pin mechanism in here, but fire, open with force. But just to test, still does live rounds just fine. I only have 4 left here, but we'll test that real quick just to ensure everything's good still. Because it would eject live rounds, no problem. But it's got that long, heavy bullet in there. So, there you go. Is it 100% flawless? Like I said, if you're a little dainty with the bolt manipulation, you're gonna have some failures. So just, again, training issue, keep it in your mind, rip the bolt back quickly, you won't have any problems. The gun likes to be beat up, so beat the crap out of it, enjoy it, have fun. So, you know, real quick, group testing. This is just me getting it on, you know, finally got it on paper and walking it up. And then, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 and 6. So I didn't have a whole lot around. I only had a box to test, and I wanted to test it on some steel. But, you know, if we're calling that a group, that's a half MOA. Still breaking in the barrel. Your results will probably differ with a suppressor on it. But I'm happy with the quick and dirty group test we got there. And hitting steel consistently. So man-sized target, no problem. Maybe a 12 by 10, right in the center punch and all those steel targets. And I've got little, I don't know, 5 or 6, maybe 4-inch, I can't remember what they are, but popper targets. Connecting with all of them, center punching all those steel targets. So that's really good to see. Just because this stinking case is so freaking short, you know, 1 inch, 300 thousandths. That's ridiculously short. So that's one of the biggest constraints here with the ejection problem. I believe I've overcome that and proven it here on camera that it does now. Like I said, it's not, I wouldn't say it's 100%, but as long as you're ripping that bolt back quickly, you shouldn't have any problems.